It's always hard for me to understand when somebody is trying to advocate for something like more care or compassion or more love or for peace. But there's a way that they do it with violence. It's just been hard for me to reconcile in my mind how a person can believe deeply that we need to protect some groups of people or like maybe children or something, but they're willing to impose violence, whether it be verbally, emotionally, psychologically, physically, on another person in order to make their point. It's just been a little mind-boggling for me. It doesn't mean that I've never been there, that I've never been angry and reacted and acted that out. But I think it's just interesting to pay attention to. And what I believe, though, is that the root of everything is trauma. And I believe that that's at the root of the person who's doing the thing that you dislike that they're doing. And it's also at the root of why we end up reacting to people in ways that maybe even we don't feel proud of. I often think that there's some way that people also justify their behavior, like they're doing something that's more virtuous, and then if the other person is doing something that they deem to be wrong or inappropriate or mean, that they feel that they can actually treat them in a different way because they truly do believe that they're right and the other people are wrong. And there's a way that I see that, and I get it, and I also invite people to just consider the possibility that that's not fully in integrity. And that in a way, if you looked at the universe and you looked at the world as like that, when we resist something, when we dislike something or we dislike the way someone's being, we're often showing up in like a similar energy pattern. So we're in this like fighting against something way. And when we're in judgment of somebody else, we're like resisting, we're rejecting parts of ourselves, or we're rejecting parts of them. And life is just life. Life is everything. Life does include darkness and light. Life includes good and bad. Life includes behaviors that you don't like and behaviors you do like. And we can either get into this pattern of that it's our job to sort of impose upon other people the way they should behave. But then by doing that, in some ways we act out of integrity with ourselves. Or we can see that our only responsibility really is to ourselves, and that we can start with us. And that when we start with us and we do that and we clean up the shadows and we clean up the parts of ourselves that we are not fully in alignment with, and we establish a better relationship with ourselves, and we heal, and we come into a place of radical acceptance of ourselves, what happens is when we do that, then we can see more clearly. Because before we do that, we're usually looking at the world from a lens that's a little foggy. It's got our traumas and our wounding and our patterns and our misperceptions. They're kind of like causing us to have like a fuzzy view. And then we look out into the world and we just don't see clearly. But when we do the cleanup, when we do the integration of these pieces of us that we've rejected over many, many, many years, and places where we've been socialized to believe we're not okay or not enough, when we clean those parts up and we come into acceptance of ourselves and we come into love, and we feel more alive, and we are suffering less, we then can look at the world from a much different perspective. And then when we do come to a problem that that we see it more clearly, and we don't have to bring judgment and blame and criticism to other people. We don't have to shame other people for the way they think. We can actually understand a little bit better that, hey, the way that I act is because of my traumas and patterns and conditioning and imprints, and that maybe that's why they act the way that they act. and we begin to be able to find a way to have more compassion for people and meet them where they are and understand why people do the way things that they do. That doesn't mean that we just accept every behavior and, we just tolerate everything. We might set a boundary or walk away or decide that that's not for us. But at the end of the day, it's coming into the real clear awareness that the only people we can change are ourselves. And anytime we impose change upon somebody, that is from the outside in. We impose upon somebody, you can't have that opinion. That is not an okay opinion. That is an offensive opinion, and you can't share it. We're not really changing them. We're really just kind of shoving it down. And I do believe that there's some balance to this, right? I do like a social contract where we kind of know that we don't do like rotten things to each other, and that for the most part people adhere to that. But at the same time, I kind of feel like there's this like inner dialogue that I'm having with myself of like, but at the end of the day, they're still going to be fraught with all these shadows and this darkness that they feel inside because they've been suppressed. And and I'm of the opinion that that's a lot of what's happening right now politically, is that we're seeing in people these places where they haven't been expressing themselves. They've kept themselves suppressed, and it's coming out. And I am personally of the opinion that I would rather see that which is hidden in the dark crevices of your life and your psyche and be able to actually deal with it than to have it hidden and not know. Because on some level, we all know, some level in our collective consciousness, we know that things like racism and xenophobia and, other types of quote unquote like negative things, they're lurking. I would much rather them rise to the surface where we can look at them. So I am not an advocate for suppressing. I'm not. I know some people would really like. I'll explain that more deeply at another point, but I'm not. I am an advocate though for us authentically learning how to connect with one another, and coming from the place where we understand why someone feels the way they feel, understands like what their history is that has them feeling that way, and helping them to have the space to be able to unpack it, to explore it, and perhaps to find their way into connection and relationship with other people who in the past they may have judged or disagreed with or disliked. So, this is my vision. I'll say it now and I'll say it again over and over again. I don't believe this is going to happen in my lifetime, but I do believe that I want to be a contributing factor to this. And I hope that, some of the words that I share might inspire you to want to step into to being a contributing factor too, because I do believe this is going to take, generations before we can make these changes. But I am personally willing to do my part and pass the baton on to somebody else when it's my time to move on. So so thank you, and I'd love to hear your thoughts and your comments as well. And if you do like this video, I'd love for you to click the like button. And either way, also, if you're just interested in seeing other videos in the future of mine, whether it be interviews or my own videos that I do like this, please click the subscribe button and the bell next to it, and feel free to share with anyone who you think might be interested. Thanks.